You notice it before you understand it. A glance held too long. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes. A silence that presses harder than a shouted command. Most people drift through these moments clueless, but you feel something deeper, like a pressure beneath the surface of human interaction. It's the sensation that people are reading you, long before you even open your mouth. And in that frozen split second, you realize something uncomfortable. You're not just being perceived. You're being assessed, measured, calculated. This is where dark psychology begins, not in manipulation techniques, not in dramatic movie-style mind control, but in something far simpler, colder, and much more ancient. The human instinct to decode weakness and opportunity. People don't read you to understand you. They read you to position themselves around you. Some do it unconsciously, guided by instinct. Others do it deliberately, guided by strategy. And somewhere between instinct and strategy stands a quiet figure history has not forgotten. Niccolò Machiavelli, observing you the same way he observed kings, soldiers, and merchants, with absolute emotional detachment. In your mind, he appears as a silhouette in a long robe, hands folded, leaning slightly forward, studying the way you hesitate, the way you react, the way your emotions flicker behind your face. He isn't judging you, nor is he impressed by you. He is simply reading you the way one reads whether patterns or battlefield terrain. And this is the first truth people avoid. Reading people is not an act of empathy. It is an act of power. You've been told all your life that to understand someone emotionally is kind, sensitive, mature. But in the real world, in negotiation, dating, conflict, hierarchy, emotional understanding is a weapon sharper than steel. Because here's the truth nobody wants to admit. The person who reads the situation first wins. They get the advantage, and you don't even notice it happen. When someone scans your posture, your tone, your eyes, your pauses, they are not connecting. They're mapping the landscape of your psychology. Where you lack certainty, where you seek validation, where you fear confrontation, where you lose composure, where you want approval, where you surrender your boundaries. You walk into a conversation thinking it's neutral. They walk in seeing a blueprint. This is the gap between you and them. And Machiavelli whispers the same lesson he wrote 500 years ago. People watch you more carefully than they listen to you. Not because they care, but because your reactions give them leverage. It's unsettling once you notice it. Every room you walk into becomes a silent battlefield of perception. Your body gives away more than your words. Your micropauses betray your fears. Your eyes reveal your expectations. Your breathing pattern exposes whether you're in control or under pressure. You don't realize it, but every second you are broadcasting information. And the world is full of people who know how to read it. Some use it to protect themselves. Some use it to influence outcomes. Some use it to manipulate. And some, the ones Machiavelli would quietly nod at, use it to dominate without ever needing to raise their voice. But here's what almost everyone gets wrong about dark psychology. It's not about tricks. It's not about hacks. It's not about those cheap YouTube videos that promise mind control in 10 steps. Dark psychology is the study of human vulnerability. Yours, theirs, everyone's. It's the understanding that humans are predictable, emotional, impulsive, and reactive long before they are logical. To read someone is to see these impulses in real time. To influence them is to guide those impulses. To control them is simply to understand the sequence before they do. You don't have to be a villain to see this. You just have to be awake. Yet most people sleepwalk through social reality. They assume conversations are equal. They assume emotions are honest. They assume reactions are innocent. They assume people's intentions mirror their words. And that's why Machiavelli appears behind your shoulder in every social exchange, silent, analytical, amused. He sees what you ignore. Human beings rarely show who they are, but they always reveal it. Not in confessions, not in conversations, but in micro-expressions, inconsistencies, patterns, and pressure points. Reading people begins the moment you learn to stop believing what they say and start observing what they do when they don't know they're being watched. This is the part most people refuse to accept. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You are already being read. All the time. By everyone. And you never even noticed. The question is no longer, are people reading me? The real question, the one Machiavelli whispers, is, why aren't you reading them back? Only when you confront this truth does the fog begin to lift. Only then do you realize that emotional control is not optional. It is the price of survival in a world built on perception. And this is where your awakening begins. But to move forward, You need to understand the actual mechanics, the real psychological structure of how people read you and how influence is formed. That's the next step. You can't read people by trying harder. You read them by seeing differently. You don't look for what they show you. You look for what leaks out in the spaces they don't control. Because the truth about people is simple. They reveal themselves most clearly when they're not speaking. Every human, confident or insecure, dominant or passive, broadcasts signals constantly. But unless you know what to look for, these signals slide beneath your awareness. Machiavelli once wrote that people judge more by their eyes than their hands. It wasn't poetry. It was instruction. When he observed diplomats, soldiers, nobles, and commoners, he saw the same patterns you see today, if you're paying attention. You don't read the face. You read the intention hiding behind the face. You don't read the words. You read the motives shaping the words. You don't read emotions. You read the pressure causing emotions to rise or collapse. The mechanics are cold, simple, and brutally revealing. 1. Baseline, the truth people can't fake. The first step to reading anyone is discovering their baseline. How they act when they feel safe. Their resting face. Their natural pace of speech. Their default posture. Their normal emotional temperature. Most people miss this because they rush to interpret meaning. But you? You stand back. You do what Machiavelli did, observe first, conclude later. Once you know someone's baseline, everything becomes obvious. Their sudden silence? Not calmness. It's fear. Their fast talking? Not confidence. It's insecurity. Their forced smile? Not politeness. It's pressure. Their rigid posture? Not discipline. It's defense. Baseline is the foundation. Without it, you are blind. 2. Microbreaks when the mask slips. People don't break down with dramatic gestures. They break down in milliseconds. An eye twitch. A jaw tighten. A breath held slightly too long. A glance away at the exact wrong moment. These cracks reveal more truth than any confession. Machiavelli understood this before psychology even existed. He watched powerful men attempt to hide their intentions, only to betray themselves with a twitch of hesitation. A king lies with his voice, but his eyes tell the truth. A rival negotiates with calm words, but his pulse reveals desperation. These microbreaks expose what they fear, what they want, what they avoid, what they hide, what they hope you don't see. Reading people is not about being clever. It's about being patient. 3. Emotional direction where the mind is moving. Every emotion has a direction. Anger wants to attack. Guilt wants to hide. Fear wants to escape. Desire wants to approach. Envy wants to undermine. Shame wants to submit. Once you identify the direction, you understand the motive. Someone who suddenly leans back when you speak isn't thinking. They're retreating. Someone who steps closer isn't friendly. They're seeking influence. Someone who stiffens isn't listening. They're resisting. Once you see emotional direction, you see strategy. This is the part that unsettles people the most. Influence is not random. It is directional. It is predictable. It is controllable. 4. Social weight, who is above and who is below. Every social interaction has hierarchy, even when no one talks about it. Someone always has more power. Someone always feels inferior. Someone is always reacting, not acting. You sense it when you walk into a room. You feel the tension of positioning, status, confidence, energy, presence. Machiavelli saw hierarchy as the true currency of human behavior. He never judged it. He simply mapped it. You read people by watching how they handle weight. Who interrupts. Who apologizes. Who avoids eye contact. Who dominates the space. Who shrinks when challenged. Who escalates when ignored. These things are not random. They are hierarchical tells. Once you spot them, you understand the invisible structure of the room. And once you understand the structure, you can influence it. 5. Cognitive dissonance, when reality and identity collide. If you want to see someone's real self, push gently against their identity. When people pretend to be strong, you say something that tests their composure. When people pretend to be confident, you apply silence and let them feel it. When people pretend to be kind, you introduce a moral dilemma. When people pretend to be unbothered, you remove validation. Their real nature erupts in the cracks between who they are and who they want to appear to be. Machiavelli would watch this moment closely, because it is the moment the mask falls. Reading people is reading their contradictions. Reading people is reading their discomfort. Reading people is reading their ego. 6. Influence, the silent manipulation already at play. Here is the part most people never realize. You are influencing people even when you're doing nothing. Your silence shapes their answer. Your hesitation shapes their confidence. Your emotional state shapes their perception. Your posture shapes their respect. Your self-control shapes their behavior. Influence is not something you do. It is something you are. Someone with emotional discipline influences simply by existing. Someone without it is influenced by everyone. And Machiavelli's shadow appears once again. Silent, analytical, not benevolent, not malicious. Reminding you that power is rarely loud. Most manipulation is quiet. A pause. A shift. An intentional breath. A well-timed glance. Influence is not domination. Influence is direction. And the person who reads people best directs the room without touching it. 7. And now you approach the real purpose. By now, you begin to sense the darker truth. Reading people is not about understanding others. It's about becoming aware of the silent war happening every second between perception and reaction. Your entire life, you've been focused on what people say. But the real game has always been in what they signal. Most people use this ability unconsciously. A few use it selfishly. A rare few use it with precision, socially, professionally, emotionally. But the rarest group of all uses it consciously, to navigate the world without being emotionally hijacked. And that is where this path leads. To the real purpose of reading people. To the truth most never see. To the transformation Machiavelli quietly waits for you to reach. This awakening is not about manipulating others. It's about no longer being manipulated. And that revelation opens the door to part 3, where you'll see what dark psychology is actually preparing you for. You don't truly awaken the moment you learn to read people. You awaken the moment you learn to read yourself. Because the deepest truth in dark psychology, the truth Machiavelli waited for you to confront, is that you are not just observing the human code. You are part of it. You've spent your entire life reacting without realizing it. Reacting to tone. Reacting to silence. Reacting to someone's raised eyebrow, tightened voice, or subtle shift in posture. You think you're making choices, but most of your behavior is nothing more than an emotional reflex powered by conditioning, insecurity, and unconscious bias. This is the invisible trap. If you don't understand your own triggers, anyone who understands people better than you can steer you. And they will. They always have. The world is full of people who know how to push you into guilt, into fear, into anger, into compliance, into desire, simply by reading what moves you. This is why reading people is only half the journey. The other half is breaking your own psychological predictability. 1. You can't read others clearly if you're controlled internally. When your emotions control you, your perception collapses. Your interpretation of reality becomes warped by your own unresolved patterns. Someone's neutral tone feels threatening. Someone's confidence feels like intimidation. Someone's silence feels like rejection. Someone's question feels like an attack. Every reaction becomes a projection. And this is where Machiavelli's presence changes. He no longer stands behind you observing the world. He now stands in front of a mirror, pointing toward your reflection. If you want to awaken, you must study the real battlefield. Your own emotional impulses. Not to kill them, not to bury them, but to control their timing and direction. Self-control is not suppression. Self-control is choice. Choice of when to reveal. Choice of when to respond. Choice of when to remain still. Choice of when to shift energy. You cannot read the code until you stop being ruled by it. 2. Awareness is the beginning of invisibility. There is a reason the most influential people are quiet at first. Silence is not passivity. Silence is data collection. Silence is positioning. Silence is the refusal to expose your emotional structure before you understand theirs. To be unreadable is to be untouchable. And this is where you begin to see the real purpose of dark psychology. Emotional control equals psychological invisibility. You stop leaking information. You stop telegraphing insecurity. You stop broadcasting weakness. You stop reacting on command. You become harder to manipulate, harder to intimidate, harder to influence. People feel it instantly. They sense the weight of someone who sees everything and reveals nothing. Your presence changes. Your energy changes. Your social gravity changes. You no longer enter a room wondering how people see you. You enter a room observing how people reveal themselves to you. This is the beginning of power, not loud, not aggressive, but calm, deliberate, and grounded. 3. The real purpose of reading people, not manipulation. Not dominance. Awareness. This is the truth most people never reach. Reading people has nothing to do with control over others. It has everything to do with control over yourself. You read people so you can predict emotional fallout before it happens. Avoid psychological traps. Recognize when someone hides hostility. Sense when praise is manipulation. Detect when affection is a tactic. See the insecurity hiding behind aggression. Understand why someone suddenly shifts energy. Identify when you are being tested. Recognize when you are being emotionally baited. Reading people is not about becoming powerful. It's about becoming aware. Awareness changes how you respond. Awareness makes you selective. Awareness makes you strategic. Awareness makes you free. Because the person who sees the code cannot be controlled by it. 4. Machiavelli's final lesson. Control begins with observation, but power begins with restraint. There is a moment, near the end of your awakening, where Machiavelli's presence feels different. He is no longer the cold analyst behind you, whispering warnings. He becomes something else entirely, a quiet reminder of discipline. He shows you the same truth he saw in courts and battlefields. Influence is not about forcing outcomes. Influence is about shaping the conditions in which outcomes form. You don't steer people by pushing them. You steer people by understanding the direction they're already moving. You don't win conflict by overpowering emotion. You win by controlling your own. You don't dominate conversations by talking more. You dominate by revealing less. The moment you stop reacting, everything changes. People show you who they really are. People reveal their intentions. People disclose their fears. People expose their motives. Not because you manipulated them, but because your calm unsettles their secrecy. Your self-control becomes a mirror that shows them their own lack of control. This is the awakening dark psychology was always pointing toward. Power is not about controlling others. Power is about becoming impossible to control. And once you reach that point, reading people becomes effortless. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Not psychological warfare. Just awareness. Pure, quiet, unshakable awareness. You see patterns where others see confusion. You see motives where others hear words. You see emotional structure where others see personality. You see the human code clearly, because you are no longer trapped inside it. Machiavelli steps back into the shadows once you reach this state. Not because you no longer need insight, but because you finally understood the one lesson he never said outright. The greatest power is clarity, not control. And now you have it. The awakening is complete. You don't react first. You observe first. You understand first. You choose first. That is the real purpose. That is the real freedom. That is the real code.